Need the mic for the thing. Okay. Well, hello everybody. Thanks for coming out today. I think it's pretty great that we started with a couple of awesome AI talks, sort of laying the floor for me to begin. Today, I'd like to talk about, well, originally I thought this presentation as I'm going to talk about how we bring bots to our meetings, but then there was a twist. So let's see what happened. First, I'd like to talk about Janus a little bit because it was a pivotal point in my career as well, even though some of you might associate me with Jitsi, I've had a past life as well. Uh, Lorenzo shared in his presentation, this innocent first commit. It always begins like this, doesn't it? You build this thing, you share it with the world, and I think it's pretty remarkable that 10 years later, we gather all here to celebrate its success. Um, and I was once very fortunate that I found it. If you look at the dates, my first teeny tiny one line commit to Janus was 1 year later, sort of, than it was launched. And I was hunting for some WebRTC backend to get the chops. I was an old void refugee looking for the brave new world. And I think he merged my PR in like 2 hours or something. And I thought, well, this is what I want to use. An active maintainer, looks like a cool dude. So let's go for it. And that escalated pretty quickly. I started sending some patches. He was liking them. And to this day, I feel very fortunate that I was able to, well, write some C, which is pretty cool. I love to do that. Then, I got a friend for life. And it was a stepping stone in my WebRTC career. I am not sure I'd be here if it wasn't for Janus. So thanks a lot, Lorenzo, for the project, me, Teco, for making it happen. Love it. Definitely well deserved indeed. And I now carry a different flag, but I will always have a special place in my heart for Janus. So what am I talking about today? I'm going to talk about Jitsi, which is the project I work on. How many of you know about it? Right, good bunch. Love to see that. For those who don't, I like to define it in like three sort of categories. It is a set of open source projects because it's like a whole platform you can deploy and have your own video infrastructure with all the bells and whistles you can expect. It's fully open source and has been around for 20 years now. Has evolved over the years, and it should have everything you need. It's also a set of APIs and SDKs, so you can have the platform and you can embed it into different applications to video enable them. Think, telehealth, insurance, call center, you name it, that kind of stuff. And it's also a community because we develop in the open. Our GitHub is where things happen. We even have like a parallel GitHub org where community members can share their projects, so on and so forth. So we've been very fortunate that it grew like this. As I said, we've been around for a pretty long time, and our sort of aim is that we are able to provide every feature that you would need in a video conferencing platform. We got it all from 4K video whiteboards, end-to-end encryption, 10,000 participants, something that shipped lately. Today we're going to mostly talk about transcriptions, AI, bots, and what have you. And for the past few years, we've been living a double life. We launched a product called Jazz, or Jitsi as a service, nothing to do with dancing, even though it complements Alberto's salsa maybe. But we cater for two sort of places now. So we got the self-hosted open source project, that is what we run ourselves. But then, if you're not interested in running your own infrastructure, well, we made it possible so that we would run it, and it's a way to sustain the project. If you want to try it, there's different plans, and you can get started for free, or host it your own, and then you don't need to talk to us. Whichever road we pick, you will have two sets of APIs that you can use. So we've got the high-level API, which is very similar to what Robert shared yesterday with Digital Samba, which is a full iframe-based API where you would embed a meetings view into your existing application, customize a lot of things in how it looks, how it behaves, but it's a full frame integration. This is generally our preferred way for people to get started because you see results very quickly. And then you can also realize, well, maybe I don't really need to build a whole front end, because what we've observed is that building a meetings front end is not like any front end. There's lots of moving parts, browser compatibility, um, how many tracks do you want to render? Are there limits in the browser? So we can take care of that for you. But if you have very specific needs, you can use the low-level API, and then you can do your own UI, different scenarios. So we've had these kind of 2D world maps where people are roaming around with avatars, and as they get closer, they kind of huddle. That's definitely a UI that you cannot build with a high-level API that we have, but you can with a low level. We call it low level, but it's much higher than, let's say, the Twilio video API or something like that. So it has everything signaling-wise sorted out of the box. So as I said, we now think of sort of two things when we make our changes, because we spread out work in the product itself, so improving the in-meeting experience, but also in the platform, because we also add new APIs that we need, our customers need, because not everything is baked into. We don't want to, let's say, add a button for everything that you can do. We think that some experiences are better developed outside of GC Meet, and we're going to see a couple of those today. So following today's trend, or let's say the AI gold rush, of course, as technologists, we asked ourselves, hey, there's things happening in this arena. Should we pay attention? Is there anything useful in this whole Gen AI, spring that's happening that we could apply to meetings to, make them better? Is this a technology that we care about? And if you look at how Gen AI has penetrated different markets, it has always been some form of interaction, chatbot thingy-majig. So we thought, how hard can it be? Let's build a chatbot thing and see where that takes us. So we started by building a little concept to help us understand what we could do. So I want to show you a cringy demo that is not a demo, it's recorded, so no sweat. It's got some audio in it. Maybe I can use this. Where is the power button here? Oh. Alrighty. Hey, Tudor. I've been thinking about the architecture of our to-do web application. Have you given it any thought?
Yes, I've been reading up on it. I think we should go with the RESTful architecture for scalability and flexibility.
That's a good idea. How about a database? Should we use SQL or NoSQL?
I think NoSQL would be better for our needs. It's more flexible and can handle unstructured data.
Yeah, agreed. And what about the front-end framework?
I was thinking of using React. It's fast and easy to work with.
Sounds pretty good. How about we get started on building the application?
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right. Now we're going to bring John Doe into the meeting. And he is arriving late. Bob just greeted him here in the chat, and now he'll get a transcript real quick of what was said in this meeting, and he can just continue the conversation because he just learned all of this. But enough said. We're going to leave the meeting. Thanks a lot, Tudor. Let's go for it. Okay, bye-bye. And once the meeting is ended, the book will also send us an email with a summary of said meeting so that we can read up on it later. And this summary will be sent to every participant in this meeting. Here is a summary. And the AI told us architecture, RESTful, NoSQL, and React. Thanks for watching. So that was our first foray in this whole shenanigans. What was it? So it's an Node.js app running Chrome via Playwright, because when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And it uses our low-level API, libgitsimit, to join the meeting because we get access, to all the streams and everything. At this point, like you may realize, our dialogue is pretty fabricated. We were still using Google Cloud Speech API for transcripts, which is not so great. ChatGPT for the AI capabilities, and I use Zapier for sending some emails. So it was all kind of duct taped together, very early stage, but it's sort of the idea was to prove a point, sorry, that this was something we could do. Let me show you one more, and it's a lot shorter, I promise.
Hello, I'm a friendly bot. This is just an example of what I can do. Check out other examples for more.
So this was the second thing we attempted, which is, well, since we have a browser, we got all the web APIs, and they're pretty great. So what can we build? So it's the same thing as before, but we use PlayHT for the audio generation. I think Evan mentioned in the first presentation today. And then that robot is actually a Blender model running in WebGL. With some, weird hacks, we got Chrome running with WebGL working inside Docker. And that was the demo was about. And what we were trying to understand is if any of these made sense. The idea was to, have some kind of our little engine that would run this Puppeteer. We would have like a user script with whatever code you want to run. And that's how we would sort of run the bots. That was the idea. And the thing is, for us, this made sense because the web APIs are so rich that if you have to reinvent the whole thing, like you want to render WebGL and we have to do something else, the browser gave you all of that for free of sorts. So it looked like a normal, like a natural thing to do. And we had other robots where we could get some, experience from. Our recordings are actually based on a Chrome instance that we record the output of. And that means that the same meeting experience that participants have is the experience that we record. Our transcriber is not a browser, but it's a headless Java-based client that receives all the media streams, and it is able to transcribe them or actually send them elsewhere via zip or whatever. It can do a number of things. One key difference between those robots at this thing we just saw is that these other robots are invisible. You don't see them, you don't interact with them. So as I said, we sort of YOLO'd it, used Chrome and made this demo, which was kind of flashy at the time because it had a lot of moving parts. Unfortunately, it put us in a bit of the wrong direction. So we did it because we could, but not maybe because we should. This is a realization that we came to a bit later. Why? Because if you see how you interact with chatbots, it's always a private conversation. It's between you and the AI. The AI is personal. It's just for you. So if it's just for you, what business does it have being a participant in a meeting? It could be something ancillary, like could be different controls, different UX, but rendering it as a participant, as an entity that collaborates with the group, it just didn't feel right. Every time we were trying to add one of these features as a bot, there was a better way to do it that wasn't an actual participant. So we decided to focus on the building blocks that built this demo and try to extract that and make it work for us. So in general, all of this Gen AI stuff looks a bit like Unix pipelines. So whatever input gets converted into text, because it's the lingua franca of the whole thing, then you apply some form of text-to-text transformation, and then you take that text and pipe it to something else. So in general, text is king in this realm, and this is where our baseline is. So we started by building out the primitives that we thought were definitely useful for the use case of meetings. And those two are transcriptions and summaries. We did have good experience with the former because this is 2017. One of our Google Summer of Code students, Nick, that then interned with us, built our real-time transcriptions engine with Gigassi that at the time was talking to the Google Cloud API speech. And we used that not to do transcriptions per se, but the idea was to use it as subtitles. So you could actually put subtitles for participants in your own language. And it's so fast that it works as real subtitles. So this was our requirement, real time, because it's got to be useful as subtitles. And then again, if you want to do something like late arrival summaries for catching up, you need to be close to real time. And today, our architecture looks a little bit like this. So the key part is that Gigassi receives the separated audio from all the participants. Then we send that data binary packed to a Skynet, which I'm going to talk about right now. And we run faster whisper. And this way we can actually transcribe each participant's audio separate. But because we know in what order things happen, we have like a proper journal of how the conversation flew. We talk after this one. Antonio is going to tell you more about this particular scheme because they use a very similar model at Miteco. But basically, the main idea is that we're able to transcribe each participant separate, get back the transcription, send it to everybody else. We are running this on Oracle Cloud with 810 graphics cards, 24 gigs of VRAM, and we can accomplish the delays that we need to be subtitle worthy. I mentioned that we run a piece of software called Skynet, and Robert also mentioned it in his presentation. I was very surprised to see that somebody else outside of our little operation was using it. I gave a presentation about it at FOSDEM, so I'm going to briefly introduce it for the purpose of establishing context. Skynet is we built it because we needed it, sort of. So we thought it made sense to put together all of the pieces of AI functionality that we needed so that we could, easily deploy them, not have this duplicity of authentication, structured logging, and other shenanigans. So in general, it's architected based on something I saw at Comcom, I think, is this idea that the different modules that you have are either transforming something to text, something from text, or from text to text. So we started out again with the basics, so transcriptions, and then summaries, and like a raw OpenAI compatible API. On that, something interesting that we sort of saw along the way is that looks like the whole ecosystem has coalesced to implementing the OpenAI compatible API. It has become, let's say, the standard, de facto standard. So if you run like OLAMA, which I think is the simplest way to run some models locally in Mac or whatever, you have like an OpenAI compatible API that you can just, like the idea is actually pretty cool because you can use the same client and then like connect to different models. And this is something that we were keen on exploring. That's why as we evolved Skynet, we ended up having this idea that internally we're going to use the OpenAI API. So the summaries application is like a thin layer on top. So if we have a customer that instead of wanting to use our self-hosted model, if they want to talk directly to OpenAI, they can. They can give us the key, and then we're going to talk to the real OpenAI. So I think being able to be selective with the models is something that is going to be very relevant in our space. So the way it sort of all fits together in the end is a little bit like this. We're going to have, of course, the user browser connecting to our web server processes or signaling server because we use XMPP. Our Jitsi video bridge will send media to Gigassi that does the transcription. We're going to fire webhooks so you can get the transcription in real time that you get, from talking to Whisper. So it's a number of moving parts that all or interconnect together. As I said, all of those are open source, so you can deploy this yourself as well. Now, a key part, of course, is getting to users. So users need to use this to be exposed to it. So here I'm going to take my product hat of sorts, or project my inner Emil, for those who know him, and tell you a bit about some kind of product changes, if you will. So in the past, we had the ability to enable subtitles, but transcriptions are like they share the engine, like you need an actual transcript to do subtitles, but the concept of a transcription is more like a recording because it keeps a record of what has happened in the meeting. So we made it so that our recordings dialog has an enabled by default option, even though you can choose to disable it at the server level, to also transcribe if you have that capability. This way, when the meeting is recorded, you're going to have your audio video recording and your transcript. And then you can do some cool stuff with the transcript. This is our 8x8 has this enterprise communications product, and this is a screenshot of the meeting history. So for a given meeting, you have some little information, like summary, the full transcript, and then again, if you keep the full transcript, as models evolve, you can maybe get better summaries as well. Something that this would be the two sections expanded. Something that I think is important to get, like these LLMs and everything is not perfect. So I think a feedback mechanism, at least the thumbs up, thumbs down, was this useful, is very important as we keep improving and refining all of these products. This is how it would look like if you joined late. Because we dissected all these things and there's no longer a bot, the way we did it was to add a generic API that allows our customers, anybody, to inject a message that can come from anywhere, like the system or whatever. And it is a message just to you. As I said, AI is personal, but you cannot reply to it. If this is from another participant, you would have like a little arrow, so you can reply to them. But this is a message that arrived just to you. It's got information relevant to you, and that's that. And it's easy for me to show you sort of how we did it and whatnot, but I think a better way to show this, to show you how others did it with our APIs. So for some that may not know the Brave Talk product, so the Brave meetings are based on Jitsi, and they recently launched Brave Leo for meetings, their AI assistant, and basically a lot of these APIs came because of the collaboration we did with them. What they wanted to build required something we didn't have before. So this is how the product looks like, and this made a lot of sense to us as well, because they've got this assistant you can ask questions to, but it's not part of the meeting. It's not the participant. It's like a panel on the side, but it's a panel in the browser. It's not a panel in our meeting, but it's got the whole context of the meeting, because we send iframe events, we send webhooks. They can gather all that data, feed it to their assistant, and have contextual information. But it's not, obstructing the meeting if you don't need it to be there. They can ask all sorts of questions about it, and they also have different models that users can select in different plans. So the way it turned out kind of served as a proof and a guiding principle to us as well. So they use, as I said, our webhooks and iframe APIs to gather the transcript and feed the context. They are actually not using Skynet. They're using their own models that sort of going back to our idea of we build a platform so you can mix and mesh. Maybe you want our transcriptions, of course, but you don't necessarily want to talk to our model because you have your own. That's great. You can definitely do that. And like in a simplified way of doing things. That thing wants to be a browser and its iframe. Um, all they sort of needed to build is a way to stitch together the transcript, because we're going to feed them one transcription chunk at a time, and then some communication with their own browser, because also like the iframe is going to feed the chunk. So when a participant joins, they can actually catch up to the previous transcript and get the new transcripts in real time via the iframe API as well. So what did we learn in this little journey that hasn't ended yet, of course, but so far feels like every time we tried to solve one of these problems, how do we do the summary better? Where do we put it? Yada, yada. Putting a participant in a room was not the right thing to do. So we focused on building blocks because in the context of a meeting, we don't believe that's necessarily a good thing. Like imagine talking to someone that's in the meeting, but like nobody else really cares, right? It's like talking to Alexa in your room or something like that. It feels weird. And that first demo might have been very poisonous because it, in a way, it put us in a little wrong track, because we thought just because it's possible, we got to do it. You have to give this AI bot a voice or a video even. We might get there, and there might be other use cases that warrant its introduction. But at this point, we don't see a reason to do it just yet. If you want to try all of these out, or any of it, you have several ways to do it. You can self-host it yourself. All the projects are in our GitHub. We run a free service for your ad hoc meetings at meet.g.si. And Jazz is our hosted platform if you want to have full customizability and access to a hosted platform without having to host it yourself. And of course, getting the predictor hat now. Um, what, like, I think the future is with the AI, so I'm not so sure we can ignore it at this point. It does have some pretty cool toys to play with. My feeling is that the current generation feels like super smart, but if you think about when GPT 3.5 was released, like right now, it feels like it was an idiot. So things evolve really quickly. And I think that the future, hopefully or probably, holds using smaller models that can do very specific tasks. We see that like big models are untenable to run. Like um, allegedly, Facebook is running like north of 1 billion worth of GPUs just to train Llama 3. That's not something people will have access to. But if you have small models that can do one thing well, summarize well, another thing well, another thing well, we don't need something that can solve everything. Maybe we can have a collection of models that can solve different problems that we have, with enough satisfaction. Uh, for us at Skynet, we'll keep iterating and adding the things that we feel are missing. An interesting complement to summaries, and I think Alberto also mentioned it, is Lava. So in the context of a meeting, I do see the value of, say, someone shares their screen, you can screenshot it and get an image description of what was shared. Because at the end of the day, the funny thing is that we build a meetings platform, but wouldn't it be great if you don't have to join that meeting at 10 p.m. with someone in the US? Like, that's the thing. With these tools, it seems like it's within grasp that we can have that. Build enough metadata, enough recording information so that you don't have to be at every meeting, but extract all the juice out of it. I'd like to end this with a little thank you for two of my comrades in crime here, Tudor and Rizvan. They built Skynet and Whisper with me, and yeah, we banded together for this. None of us had any experience whatsoever in AI, but we feel pretty good about where we arrived so far. Thanks for listening, and that's how you can reach out.
Thank you, Saul. So, any questions? Okay.
Hi, Saul. Thank you for
Robert.
your contribution and speech. As always, very interesting. As I learned from you last night, you offer this low-level API, which I wasn't aware of, and as I understand, it's not that low. It's actually much higher than Twilio's, and of course, all
Yep.
Twilio customers should rather go to Jitsi than Zoom, right? I think that would
Well,
make sense.
we didn't do it for that reason. Like it's, I think, so that API has been around for, I think, since the very beginning of Jitsi. It's just that we were a bit coy in making it public. Well, not public, but making it available because it's very tied to like the rest. You can't just run a given version that is not tied to a given version of the backend because there is some protocol. There might be protocol incompatibilities, but I believe we've been pretty diligent in not breaking things and in the way we approach it. So, for instance, we encourage our customers to source the library from us because one of the things that we offer in Jazz is versioning, release versioning. So our customers, especially medical, I think they don't like change very much, or they like to scrutinize change rather. So they can say, I'm pinned to this release, and we will keep releases for a number of months. And so then they can decide when to switch. So if you source the library from us, and in the URL, the release can be appended, they can get the right version that will work. So now we're a lot more confident in making it available for people to use and build upon it than before. We had to listen to customers and actually help them build something to realize, okay, we think we can do this now.
So that's a good segue into my actual question, which is, what percentage of projects, I don't know, in terms of minutes or projects, would you say are with your front-end iframe-based approach and the low-level one?
So it's mostly iframe, but that's only sort of the ones we know of, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. We don't collect any stats from our Debian package installs, from our Docker deploys. But what we do tell people that ask about, hey, I want to use the low level, but I'm self-hosting, we always say, deploy the whole stack, ignore the front end, because the library is separate anyway. It's a separate bundle. Load the library, and then this way you will know you have the compatible shenanigans in place. So those numbers, I don't know. For the Jazz customers, is mostly iframe. Everybody's on the iframe. We do have a few of them. One of them that comes to mind that has an interesting take on things. So two of them. One is a customer that does, I forget, trials in the UK. And they're very particular about how things need to look like because the defense and the prosecution need to be on different sides of the screen. And so they build their own layout, and that's why they're using the library. Another customer, they do remember the name of, is CoScreen, got acquired by Datadog, and they do like a collaborative screen sharing sort of thing where you can share different windows at the same time and then collaborate on them, like an editor, for example. And they've got like a little, like it's all like floating widgets. One of them is a little film strip with all the participant styles. That is not something you can do with an iframe. So they use the low-level API in an custom Electron app, I believe, for instance. So it's usually like use cases that do merit using the low-level API.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Saúl.
Thanks, everybody.